Hi, Dr. West. Welcome to my second reflection vlog. And in this vlog, we'll look at Appalachian Film Part 2, Ron Eller's visit to EKU, the books, House of Fields, and Hollowing Out the Middle, and the discussion board posts. So I guess we'll start with the Appalachian Film, Part 2. I thought it was really interesting that I had no idea that the American Indians owned slaves. That was really shocking for me. I don't remember hearing that in the history books, history class. Another thing I thought was pretty interesting was when the Hatfield and McCoys. I had no idea the true motive behind the feud, though. I thought it was just a bunch of, warring families. They were just a bunch of hillbillies shooting each other, blah, 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 blah. But according to the film, Ron Eller from UK stated that it was more of a business motive that caused the feud. One was doing pretty well. I think the Hatfields were doing pretty well. The McCoys in Kentucky, not so much at that time. And then later on down the road, corruption rears its ugly head, demonizes this whole hillbilly image, and just totally started to build that foundation of that stereotype that we have of hillbillies that I had prior to watching this film. Towards the latter part of the film, learned about the coal wars, and that really kind of helped shape why this Appalachian community is in the state that it's in, the poverty, the ravishing of the land, and you can really see the drive of capitalism making its influence into this area, oppressing the people, and it almost ended in a really bad divorce. You had the country taking with it the coal, the local folks, they're left with the victims in this case. It's almost as if the children are the Appalachian people, and they really received the ugly, brutal end of the divorce. So the coal's gone, country's fed off the coal, didn't really return any of the profit or the benefits, and look where we are. It's a beautiful country. Appalachia is really beautiful, really close ties to nature. You've got rippling waterfalls, beautiful forests, mountains, and Ron Eller really brought that back into perspective. He uncovered a lot of my misconceptions I had about Appalachia, and he also confirmed some notions that I had about Appalachia. For example, some of the misconceptions that I had were that Appalachians were all the same, and it turns out that they're really not all the same. They're a very diverse crowd. You have some that are very affluent, some that are not so much, and even though it appears Appalachians are all the same, the stereotype, in fact, they truly aren't. Like some of the family names have more weight than others, and I see this actually in the area where I work. They associate groups, almost stereotype individuals based on their last name. Like, oh, they're a Johnson, oh, they're a Smith. So there are some differences even within this culture that is Appalachia, and I thought that kind of resounded a little bit to my own experience when I've heard that. I thought it was really awesome that he truly he knows who he is, where he came from, and he embraces it. And actually that was a strength for him. He gave us that story of he couldn't afford tuition. He thanked the dean, and basically because of his token Appalachian status, they try to keep him on, and that actually is what kept him going in higher education, and one of the many steps that led him to what he is today. So I just thought it was great that you shouldn't forget who you are, that you should actually be proud of who you are, which as a Korean American, that resounds to me as well. My father always tells me, never forget where you come from. I want you to assimilate to American cultures. I want you to assimilate so that you're successful in this workforce, but never forget that you're Korean. Never forget, be proud of who you are. So I thought that was a nice little bridge between my dad and another professional saying the same thing. So I just thought it's great because I'm a teacher, and I think what I've been doing is now wrong. I've been trying to change their ways a little bit, try to make them adopt more mainstream ways. And it's for a good reason. I want them to be successful, just like my dad said. I want them to be assimilate, um, and do well, adapt. The Darwinian theory. However, and got this quote by Bruce Lee, of all people: "A teacher must never impose on his student to fit his favorite pattern. A good teacher functions as a pointer, exposing a student's vulnerability and causing him to explore both internally and externally, and finally integrate himself with his being." So in short, what he's basically saying is a teacher shouldn't make a student fit into a different mold, be a different person. Instead, that teacher should point out the uniqueness of that individual, try to draw on the strengths and push that person to be successful while being who they are. And I think Bruce Lee was right in that aspect. I think that we as educators should do that. We shouldn't try to change the students to be more like someone. We shouldn't make them sell out, so to speak. And that is essentially what Ron Eller advocated. He himself has done that, and he has been successful. So I thought that was a really awesome statement. I think that's a good message that we should send, that everybody should know. The kids, the students, the community. I think it's important to know that they can still be successful and be proud of who they are. We shouldn't try to change them. And finally, I thought it was really interesting how, because I asked a question in there, what inspired you to be different? What inspired you to actually go to college, get out of Appalachia? And he said it was because he was inspired by someone. And then that brought to memory the story of Homer Hickam, Rocket Boys, the character on October Sky, motion film. And he was the same way. He was inspired by his teacher, Miss Riley. Got out of Colwood. He went to NASA, engineer there for a while. And that's the case of Eller's story. Someone inspired him. He went to college, got a higher education. So I thought it was great that Eller was inspired to be an achiever, which ties in with the book that we read, Hollowing Out the Middle. Now, Hollowing Out the Middle is about, I think, New York City folks. They go into Ellis, Iowa, and they do kind of a study there. And they disseminated students into 4 groups. There are the achievers, the stayers, the seekers, and the returners. And the achievers are the ones that have potential. They might not have a lot of opportunity though, and the school, the community kind of push them to leave and be successful in other areas. So they're the ones that are kind of leaving the community, causing this brain drain. The others, some want to leave, but they're kind of tied there. They stay there. They can't get out. Others do leave, but it turns out, they eventually come back. Like folks in the military, they might go to the service and they come back. Ron Eller was an achiever. He had potential. Someone inspired him. He left. He's now at UK, but he's not working back at the same community, I think West Virginia, that he was from. And this concept kind of is personal to me because my parents live in Franklin, Tennessee, which is just about 20-30 minutes south of Nashville. And just south of Franklin, there's a small little town, Thompson Station. It's essentially kind of like what Waco is to Richmond. So, anywho, they've built, just like they said in Hollowing Out the Middle, if you build it, they may come. Well, they've built this Kroger marketplace, they've built all these plazas, a little Japanese restaurant, really developed that area in this one little spot, and it hasn't been doing well. Last time I was home, even on the news, they stated that businesses are starting to shut down in that area. Everybody's still going to Cool Springs, they're going to Nashville, they're still going to Franklin to do their shopping. Even though they live there, they prefer to do the shopping elsewhere. So it kind of reminds me of this story, that even though you're from this local area, you're not giving back to your own local area. You're actually doing business somewhere else. So the money's not coming back. The human capital that we're making in the schools, they're not coming back. And in the business world, it seems to be the same thing. And it's kind of tragic. And But I think one of the main issues, and they kind of addressed in this book, is you gotta first communicate that need, why they need to do that. And I think that's a stage that we're kind of stuck at a lot, is that we're not informing the community, we're not letting them know, we're not really stressing and that urge, that need of really needing to support these local things. But you could do that and they might not care, or they might still hold other priorities. Like, yeah, that's great and all, but you know what, I'm finding the cheapest price, and that is priority number one. And you know, they might get a better deal at the bigger city, Nashville, Franklin, etc. And you know, it's hard to argue that in the economy that we're in, the tough times that we're in. You know, it's you gotta cater to their needs first too. So they have needs. Community has needs, and oftentimes they don't mesh. So The House of Fields was really a rich, colorful book. I really enjoyed that first-person perspective of what it's like to live in a rural area. It's something that, you know, if you never lived in a rural area, you don't pick up on those things. And her use of artsy writing and poetic metaphors really kind of paint the picture for you quite vividly of what it's like to live in a rural area. And but for that reason, though, I had really a tough time trying to wade through all that writing. Luckily, though, it was heavily concentrated in the beginning, and then it started to wane as she went into the middle and final acts of the book. But what I mainly got out of it was a nice rural perspective from someone that has never experienced that before. I like the context of education, her eyes viewing education, and through her eyes you can get a sense of what education was like back then. You had the one-room schools, and in the one-room schools there was evidence that there was not a lot of differentiation going on. I thought that was interesting, that one of the biggest problems we face is not differentiating enough, adequately, efficiently, and you can see that in her story in those one-room schoolhouses. So that was kind of neat. And the other thing I liked was she basically explained how students learn. You know, she described when she had to draw a certain animal, she couldn't do it because, well, she'd never seen one before. She's not used to that in her household, her prior experiences. So it touched on that concept of schemas, that you should have like a mental map, a previous understanding of things to build upon to learn new stuff. And it's important for teachers to find those schemas, use those schemas, and add to those schemas, either dispelling misconceptions or building and confirming, building more knowledge on top of that, cementing it. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it turns out those consolidated schools weren't the only centers for education. From the discussion board posts, it seems that churches, the influence of religion, were another avenue, another site for education for a lot of these Appalachian communities, rural communities. People would gather together, brought the community together, and one poster found like a finding that said that low socioeconomic groups viewed religion as a coping mechanism. I guess if they were, you know, in times of desperate need, they didn't have much, hope looked pretty bleak for them, and they could use religion, this afterlife, this God watching over them, as kind of a reassurance that, you know, times will be better later on. Endure it, you know. So, but for higher socioeconomic status groups, they viewed it more as a status symbol. Like, I guess that would be more like, hey, I'm in this church, and I'm in this group, so this says this about me, reflects these qualities. So I guess I can kind of see that too. I thought that was kind of interesting. So the influence of religion is pretty big on rural communities. It's almost like a stitching. It stitches all these different fabrics together, different groups together, and dismantling that religion, or, you know, trying to drop it in place of another, or, you know, trying to take that away from schools, I guess really kind of ruins the integrity of that dress, metaphorically the community. What I would really like to see is us as a society to just stop this lack of differentiation. And I know, it by not differentiating, by following cookie cutter methods and funneling diversity down, it makes your job a lot easier. It's more manageable, it's lazier, it takes less effort. I understand this, but you can see the ramifications of that in the classroom if you don't differentiate. And let's just extrapolate that out into society. Appalachia is a student. You don't want to just cookie cutter method Appalachia, because Appalachia has its own strengths, its own beauties, its own infrastructure, and you shouldn't try to make it be something else. Instead, I would like to see us recognize the beauty and try to build around that beauty and really cultivate it once more.